Hey, Japanese Life Math Industry, and we are going to take a look at choosing what operation property to use. So in the last video, we were looking at operators like the multiplication property and the division property. And a few videos before that, we did the addition property and the subtraction property. But many kids get confused on what property they use in geometry. So that's why in this video, we're learning about this, and we're going to give you key clues and some ideas to think it easier so you know what to use when you cover your next geometry problem. So to start out, we made a spectrum. If you ever knew what a political spectrum is, it's in 4 different quadrants. Left, right, authoritarian, libertarian. But we remodeled it into a math spectrum because when you use the 4 different operations, they have different jobs, but 2 of them have the same idea, but with different words. Here's an example. You start in the middle. The first thing you gotta decide is if the problem is saying you have to conclude something that is a bigger piece, or you have to conclude something that's a smaller piece. Another thing you look at is, are all the pieces congruent, or if all the pieces are not congruent? Well, this spectrum is going to explain and it's going to determine what you can use. For example, if I was trying to find a bigger piece in a geometry problem and all the pieces are congruent, then I would go to here and go up. So I would use the multiplication property. That is an example how we can use the spectrum. So we are going to clarify what the difference between multiplication, division, subtraction, and addition. Let's start with addition because that's the easiest to work with. So right here, there are pieces that I got from Vex Robotics. What we can do with them is demonstrate what the properties mean for these and explain why they work. So for addition, what we can do is we have to prove, or we have to explain why this orange piece is going to be congruent with the red, green, and gray pieces. So that is the addition property. The orange piece is congruent to red plus green plus gray. So the length of these are going to be the same thing and congruent to the length of this. That is the addition property. Trying to add things that are in different sizes to make something congruent to the piece that you're trying to congruent it to. Now let's look at subtraction. Subtraction is a little bit different than addition, but instead of making it a bigger piece, you turn it into a smaller piece. So with subtraction, what we can do is say, if we want to find the smaller piece that are congruent to this one, or find 2 smaller pieces that are congruent to each other, then we'll have these 2 merge. We'll put them together, and this right here, we can take this away, and now we can conclude that red and gray is going to be congruent with green. So basically, what we did was the subtraction property. With the subtraction property, you're trying to find a smaller piece, but if the pieces are not congruent. This, and this are not congruent. But if we have red plus gray, and we compare it with green, red plus gray is congruent to green. So that is a subtraction property. Next, we are going to look at the multiplication property. So in this case, we're trying to find the bigger piece again. So we'll bring back this orange piece, but take these 2 out, because when you're using multiplication, the pieces have to be congruent. So we can say orange is going to be congruent with gray and green added together. But gray and green are congruent with each other. Merge them together and it's congruent with orange. So that is the multiplication property. Two smaller congruent segments or angles, combine the two, is going to be congruent with a much bigger object. And finally, with division, you try to find a smaller piece, but it still has to be congruent. So we can take orange away. Then we can say and conclude that these two are congruent. Gray is going to be congruent to green. And that is how we use the division property. Not only that, that is how we can understand what operator to use depending on what kind of problem it is and what the problem wants you to solve or prove or conclude. I hope this video has helped you understand what operations to choose to what problems. Thank you for watching Top Opinion Life the Math Industry. Like and subscribe.